So what we're going to look at in this lesson is the circumference of a circle. So first of all, we need to know what is the circumference. If we have a look here, we have a circle. So we can get this circle by plotting a middle point, which is this point here in the middle of the circle, and we can call that point, let's say, O. So this point O. And then what we can do is we can use a compass and we can trace this line out here. This line, which essentially is the boundary of the circle. So O is the center, of the circle. And then this boundary here, this boundary is what we call the circumference. So the boundary is what's known as the circumference. So basically, if you were to, let's say you're to start here and you're to walk all the way around this boundary, the whole way right around back to here, that distance that you walk around here is what's known as the circumference of the circle. Now if I was to take this this circle here and I was to draw a line directly across it, so imagine I draw a line directly from one side, directly through the center and directly over to the other side. So I have this line here. So this red line that I've drawn, this is what's known as the diameter. And essentially what it does is it splits the circle in half. So you have two equal sides either side of this diameter. So this here is what's called the diameter. Now if I was to take this diameter and I was to split it in half, or if I was to take a point, let's say, and draw a line from the middle point just out to the boundary, this middle point, which essentially is half of the diameter, this point, this line here, is what's known as the radius. The radius. So we have the boundary of the circle, that's what's called a circumference. We have a line drawn from that half that splits the circle in half. It's drawn from one side to the other. That's what's known as the diameter. And then half of the diameter, or a line that's drawn from the center point out to the boundary, is what's known as the radius. Now if you were to draw a line from this center point out to any part of the boundary in the circle, it would be the same length, it would have the same radius. Now if I was to take this diameter, so this distance from here to here, and I was to try and stretch that around the circumference. So imagine I took this length from here to here, and then I was to try and see how many of these lengths I could fit around the circumference of the circle. What you would find is that it would roughly, we would get 3.14. Okay, approximately 3, we would get the diameter would fit, we get about 3 of these diameters around the circle. We would fit them around the circle and around the circumference of the circle. And this relationship in relation to the circumference and the diameter, for example, of a circle, the relationship or the ratio between them is 3.14, and this number, it's what's called pi. We give it this special number, it's called pi. So 3.14 is equal to pi. Now pi it has a decimal place that keeps recurring on and on and on. But for the sake of what we're doing here, we're just abbreviating it to be 3.14, and that's pi. So basically what that means, what this 3.14 means is, it's how many times this diameter here will fit around the circumference. So you'll roughly get about 3 and then 0.14 of the length of this diameter around the circumference. And that's the same for every circle, no matter what the size of the circle or the radius of the circle. So this is a Greek letter and it's called pi. And it's used to represent this relationship. And if we want to write, we can roughly write pi as a fraction. If I wanted to take this decimal and change it into a fraction, a rough approximation of it as a fraction is equal to 22/7. Okay, that's a rough estimate. So if you were to take 27 and divide it by 7, you'll find that you get roughly around 3.14. So this is this special character, this special number that's called pi, and this Greek symbol here is used to represent that particular number. So again, all it is, you take the diameter, and it's the number of times the diameter will fit around the circumference. It roughly goes, you'll get roughly about 3.14 you'll get this diameter to fit roughly about 3.14 times around the circumference of the circle. Now in Junior Cert Maths, what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to calculate the circumference of a circle if they give you the radius. And how you do that, there are two formulas that we use to get the length of the circumference. So the formula that we use in order to get the length of the circumference of a circle is, we can use this one, which is 2 pi r, where r is the radius. So again, if we go back here to our drawing, this here radius is r. Or we can just do pi times the diameter. So the diameter is this d here. So that's what we mean when we look at a circle, so radius and diameter. So 2 pi r, or pi times the diameter. So as an example, so imagine we have this circle here, and we can see here it gives us the radius. So this is the radius. And what you've been asked to do is to calculate the circumference of this. Okay, so calculate the circumference. So what we can do is because we have the radius, we can use this guy here. So the circumference is going to be equal to 2 times pi times the radius. So see the way we have these guys all beside each other, so it's 2 pi and the radius. So what this actually means, when you have, for example, numbers and symbols together like that, it just means multiplied. So it means 2 multiplied by pi multiplied by r. So the circumference is going to be equal to 2 multiplied by pi multiplied by the radius. So if we look at our question here, so the radius is 12. So what we can do is we can just take this radius here. So the radius, or r, is equal to 12. So you need to be able to look at the diagram that they give you and be able to identify or take the radius out of it. So we take our values and we plug them into this formula here. So this is going to be equal to 2 multiplied by pi multiplied by 12. And then we just multiply these out, so you can stick it into your calculator. 2 multiplied by pi multiplied by 12. So it's important that you're able to get pi on your calculator. So there'll be on your calculator, there'll be a button that has this symbol on it. So you just multiply these out. So 2 multiplied by pi multiplied by 12. Into a calculator, you're going to get roughly 75.36 centimeters. And if we were to round that to one decimal place, so we're keeping this decimal, so we're looking at the 3, looking at the number after it, it's greater than 5, so we have to round this up. So this would become 75.4 centimeters. And this is the circumference. So the circumference is equal to 75.4 centimeters. So what that means is if you were to start here, let's say, and you were to go measure all the way around this line here, right the way back to here, the length of that would be 75.4 centimeters. So it's important that you're able to take this formula here and you're able to use it in order to calculate the circumference if you're given the radius. Now the other option is, so for example, if the radius of this is 12, then the diameter is going to be 24. It's just going to be double this. So you could, if you have the diameter, for example, you could just use this formula, pi times the diameter. So that would just be pi times 24. You multiply it out and you're going to get the same answer here as well. So again, that's just like a quick introduction to this idea of like the circumference of a circle. So what is the circumference? It's this distance around here. We've looked at what the diameter is. So for example, if we were to cut the circle in half and draw a line from one side to the other like so, that's what's known as a diameter. And then what you have, if you were to take half of the diameter, or if you were to go from the middle point out to the end of one of the boundaries, this is what's called a radius. So these are important terms. So you need to know what the radius is, you need to know what the circumference is, and you need to know what the diameter is. And then if we look at the relationship between the diameter and the circumference, so roughly this length here, which is known as the diameter, that will fit 3.14 times around the circumference. And that's the relationship. And this relationship is known as pi, and it's given this special number, which is 3.14. And if we wanted to look at this as a fraction, it's approximately 27 over 7. And then we just went through this example here to show you how to calculate the circumference given the radius of a particular circle. So hopefully that makes sense, and thank you for listening.